In this video, we are going to continue to talk about render settings and render parameters in VRAY for Cinema 4D. And we're going to talk about an interior rendering. So we will see some tools here that we can use in interiors. While in the previous video, we talked about exterior rendering with some tips and tricks about, for example, adding a more realistic grass to the render to your view, and also how we can use rounded corners and other effects, and also how we can eliminate the noise in the scene using the global illumination parameters for exteriors in that case. And also we saw how to use the denoiser, which is a really important tool that you can use anywhere, and we are going to reuse also if we want to create faster renderings with a little bit of approximation, especially in the really fine details. So we can use some of these, like the render corners and also the fur object that we use to create the grass, also in interiors. For example, we can use it to create carpets in interiors. So rounded corners also, it's really helpful in many situations. So we can see here how we are passing through different scenarios, from interior to exterior to single object render. And let's go back here to a previous scene when we use LightMix. Now in this video, we're also going to see how we can set up, use and manage the light mixer or LightMix. That, just as a reminder, it's helpful to turn on and off all the lights and change the intensity and the color in post-production. So without re-rendering, you can change a lot about your artificial and natural lights. So let's start here with a new topic, actually, which is not pretty new, because if you saw the video course on Cinema 4D, you already know how to create a camera. So when you create a VRAY camera or VRAY physical camera, that's gonna be a standard Cinema 4D camera, but also with a VRAY tag applied on it. So just as in Cinema 4D, when you create a camera, that camera is gonna be placed in the viewport where you are using it. So if you are in perspective and you create a camera using, for example, a view like this, so let's do it again and create a physical camera. If you move, you can see the camera right there. So you can see that the camera stays in the position where you were previously. So this is one way you can create cameras, and actually you can create more than one. And cameras, just like in standard Cinema 4D, are pretty helpful because they will help you to save some views, some point of views, then you can reuse later. So if you click on this little aim, you're gonna get inside that particular camera. So they're pretty useful, especially for this. You can save basically your point of views, and you can go outside and inside, fix the views when you are inside by just using the navigation tools, or you can transform the camera on the viewport. Okay, here we have the standard settings that we can still use for Cinema 4D, and this is the physical camera tag. So you have some standard here for the lenses if you want to have grand angular or telescopic lenses. So the camera is going to simulate what happens in reality. So when you work with the lenses, you're changing the field of view basically. So you can either work with the focal length or the lenses, or with the field of view. Now you have other tabs here that you usually have also in Cinema 4D, and then you have an extra one, which is physical camera, and that's the tag that's going to be added by the VRAY engine. So right here you can see that again if you select the camera. Also you can change from still if you want to use a photo camera, or movie video if you want to have a video camera, because you can animate cameras in Cinema 4D if you don't know, and you can create also like cinematics using the movement of the cameras. Again, you have here the focal length, the zoom factor, and well, this is the same basically that you find in the standard Cinema 4D. And aperture, here you have the film speed, ISO, the f number, and the shutter speed. Now these three are the three that define the exposure, the photographic exposure. And with that you can also manage the depth of field, and you can increase or decrease the depth of field and motion blur effect. They both concern the focus and of an object and the blurriness of an object. Then you have also vignetting, which is another effect to simulate what happens in reality with cameras, like black or darker corners, and tilt shift and distortion here. These are again something concerning the lenses. So what you usually do is basically try to simulate what happens in reality with the camera lens. So if you go here and the camera settings, if we go and search for these values like ISO, you can see what's the difference between a lower or higher value. So it's basically increasing the light inside the camera. And also here the f number is going to define the aperture of the shutter. So the more open will be the shutter, the more light will come in, so you will increase the intensity of the exposure in the camera, and it will look brighter. And also if you use a larger aperture, it's gonna increase the depth of field effect, so the focus and defocus of foreground and background. We're gonna see that in just a minute. And you will find many examples that are really helpful on the web to show you how the focus and defocus works and how it's related to the f-stop or f number. You can call it in different ways. Shutter speed is the speed of the shutter. So it's the slower will be, the more light will come in, and the more you will have the motion blur effect. The faster and the less motion blur effect you will have. And again, you will find here example on the parameter, how to set it, how to manage it in real cameras as well as in VRAY camera or physical camera. So again, it's like when we use physical materials. When we use physical cameras, we try to simulate or replicate what happens in reality using, in this case, the shutter of the camera. That's gonna involve the speed and the aperture and the exposure. So this is why sometimes it's called photographic exposure. Now, vignetting again is this effect here that is caused by the camera itself, not really by the lens, but let's say by the borders of the also of the lens basically. So it's recommended that you use a little bit of these effects if you want to increase the realism. Also white balance, you can find this in cameras. So when you have like some really warm effect and you want to balance, you will use the bluish, and if you have some bluish effect in the scene and you want to balance, you will use some more orange effect. And you can use also temperature here in Kelvin, as we explained that in the lights. Now let's move out of the camera here, and I want to start a render just to show you here that this is how the scene looks outside the camera. And right now I'm using some of the lights and the projector and the TV screen that we have set up in another lesson using lights. And I'm gonna stop this, and now I'm gonna get